A couple of weeks ago, the museum whose layout I operate on was having a train show where they were selling off some models that they had gotten donated. I was busy that weekend and couldn't go, so I gave one of my friends a crisp $100 bill and told him to spend it on about 10 project engines for me, and now I have all those, and I think there's some pretty interesting locomotives. So essentially, I spent $100 on mystery locomotives, and I have them here now, and I'm going to start going through all 10 of them. The first of which is this Bachmann Santa Fe 280. I've actually had one of these in the past. These I have heard are notoriously bad for having cracked gears, like most of these Bachmann steamers are, but this one on both sides seems to be in quarter, which is pretty good. The shell looks pretty shiny, so it might have some oil or something on there I need to clean off. And something else about this model which I don't particularly like, I don't know how well you'll be able to see it in there. You probably can't, but there's a smoke unit in there. So when I work on this thing, I'm going to have to remove that smoke unit because I always have a little bit of fear around those. I don't want them melting the shell or anything. I don't like the smell that they make, and I just don't think on models this size they work really well. Other than that, this one seems to be in pretty good shape. All the axles look to be in quarter. The wheels look pretty clean. It's still got the traction tire. And aside from the pilot that just fell off, everything looks to be here. And the tender itself is also in pretty good shape. And I also did not mention this. I do not know if any of these models run or not. I was given them as they are and was told some of them run and some of them don't. So we'll have to find that out at the end. Next up is a very cool yet very unexpected piece for me to end up with. This is a Varney Aerotrain locomotive, and no, I don't have any of the cars or anything for it yet. This one was also there, and it looks like it has the original Varney drivetrain. I did notice a few things about this model which seem a little bit unusual. It looks like there's a piece of paper with some writing in there. I don't know if that would be factory or not. And it looks like this wire has just been covered up with a piece of Scotch tape, which is a little bit questionable. And it looks to me like this rear axle may actually be metal. I would be surprised if they did that from the factory, so I would assume someone went in here and did some custom work to this thing. Again, this will be a really fun project for me to work on, but I do want to see if I can find some cars for it first. There's also another 280, not at all like the Bachmann one. This is some vintage diecast model. I want to say Bowser. I don't know off the top of my head. There's no markings or anything. It could be Bowser, it could be Roundhouse. If anyone knows exactly what this is, please let me know. But this is a very unique looking model. This locomotive and the tender both look to be in pretty good shape. If I pick the thing up, you can clearly see the motor is in there. One thing of note is that, I don't know how well you can see it, that worm gear looks huge. That's why the manufacturer of this thing is throwing me off. I've never seen a worm gear that big on a die-cast steam engine. So again, if anyone does know, please let me know who made this. But in general, the shell looks like it's in really good shape. There's a little bit of paint chipping off, but it's really not that bad. It's kind of hard to tell on camera, but it's mostly around these rivets and things like that. The side rods on both sides of the unit look to be in really good shape. Some of the paint on the cylinder is wearing off a little bit. The wheels themselves are a little bit dirty, but that is to be expected with an old model. The plate that holds in the pilot truck actually looks really nice and clean. It's got a horn hook on it, which is not very springy, and is weirdly held in by a screw on the top. The drawbar back here is also broken. That can be replaced pretty easily. And the wire going to the tender is broken off, but I don't think it's broken because on the tender, there's a little screw, and I would assume that wire just screws into the tender. While it's still in good shape, the tender itself is a little bit worse for wear. As you can see, there's some scratches and things and a little bit more paint chipping. It looks like there's something, probably the fuel load, that is missing on top of here, but otherwise, it looks to be in fairly decent shape. I mentioned the screw with the wire. I'm assuming that just gets screwed right into there. The trucks themselves look to be in pretty good shape. Again, the wheels are a little bit dirty. And this chassis actually looks really interesting. I've never seen a tender chassis that looks just like that. So overall, I think this engine is also going to be a really fun piece to work on. Moving away from vintage models for a moment and onto something a lot more recent, this is an Athearn ready-to-roll Alco switcher. I want to say it's an RS2. I don't know these things very well, but it's some sort of RS switcher. I know that for a fact. And this one is much more worse for the wear. As you can see on this side, the handrails are kind of leaning and broken off. On the front, this little piece here is just kind of off. So is this, I believe, this stanchion of the handrail. On the other side of the model, well, this bit up here is perfectly fine for the handrails. All the handrails here are missing. On the back of the model, half of the rear handrail setup is missing. It looks like there's an exhaust stack that's missing on top of the model. I would at least assume that's where the exhaust stack is supposed to go. It's pretty dusty, and on both ends, the McHenrys are broken off. This one is a model that I was told specifically does not run, but it's an Athearn blue box underneath, essentially. At least I think so. So it should not be very difficult to fix. Before I go about fixing this model mechanically, I want to get all the components to do a cosmetic restoration of it as well, which will mean I need the handrails, probably all of them all around the model. I don't just want to get the one side. I think it would probably be best to replace them all in one go, as they all seem kind of worn out. Athearn will probably have some that I can buy, so I'll probably need to contact them somehow. I don't know for a fact that they will, but I would be surprised if they don't, considering I think they have a new release of either this exact style of RS switcher or a different one recently, so I think my chances there are pretty high. I also do need to get an exhaust stack for this thing. I might actually have one somewhere in my parts collection, maybe not for an Athearn specifically, but for some sort of Alco switcher that I can use. If not, I might again be able to reach out for Athearn. But other than that, and maybe I think this is where the bell's supposed to go, that looks like that's missing too. But other than those few components, I think this thing should be a pretty simple fix. Another engine that'll need a lot of cosmetic work, but is going to be a very fun project to work on, is this Bachmann DD40AX. A couple of years ago, and actually from this museum's exact same sale, I had an Athearn version of one of these, their DD40, which yes, is a DD40, not a DD35, there are definitely differences there, which was a much smaller unit. So now it's kind of cool to have the actual DD40AX, even though this one definitely needs some work. Cosmetically, it's got a ton of dust, it needs a good wash, but I think the more difficult issue is the handrails. I think every single handrail on this model needs to be replaced. This portion is completely missing. This is intact, but it's broken right here. Whatever this thing right here is, I don't know exactly what it's called, it's missing on that side, and that's a pretty important piece. It looks like it's about to break off on this side as well. On the front, you can see this piece is also not in the greatest shape. The handrail in the back is broken. And while the handrail in the front looks okay, I want to replace all of them. I don't know if there's anyone who actually makes replacement handrails for these things. If anyone does know of a place to find replacement handrails for this exact model, please do let me know because I want to buy some. But that'll be something pretty difficult to track down, so this one might be on the back burner for a little while. Other than the missing components, there's a lot of interesting things around this model. It has an actual beacon, which does work, I have been told, and I've seen videos of in the past. It is an actual 8-wheeled model. The front truck is not powered. It looks like there's something, I think there's a 9-volt battery or something that links up to some controller I don't have. I've seen a video of that in the past. And then the rear truck is actually a pancake drive. I don't know if one of these is just broken, but it seems like these two axles power it. There's a chance that this one does, but it could have a cracked gear. And this one I think is just an idler wheel, but I'll have to dig into this model to see. Once I get all the parts, it should be a pretty fun restoration to do, but again, it'll be on the back burner. I've got so many other engines to work on, and this one needs parts. For the third and final Bachmann locomotive of this haul, we have a much smaller unit, this little 060 tank engine, which I believe is almost identical to an AHM 060, but I'll get into that in a second. Again, cosmetically, this one's a little bit dusty, but it looks to be in really good shape. It probably just needs a good wash up. On this side, it looks like there may be a piece missing, but that's not the end of the world. On the front, it's got a horn hook, which for Bachmann models is actually rare. A lot of these steamers just have fake dummy couplers, so even if it's a horn hook, it's nice to have a coupler up there. And then on the rear, it's got a Katy. On the underside, it does not seem like there are any traction tires, and these wheels are pretty dirty. But other than that, it looks to be in great shape. Inside the model, what makes me think that it is likely got something to do with AHM is the motor. I don't know how well it'll want to focus, but that in there looks a lot like an old AHM motor, and it's definitely not the same pancake-style motor that Bachmann used in their steam engines of this era. What I have been told is that Bachmann and AHM for some reason partnered on these engines. I don't know why, and I don't know if that's the truth. I've not actually looked into it anymore. I just had someone tell me that when I was showing them this model. But what does make me think that that's possible is a very specific locomotive I have, which I'm not going to pull out. Bachmann and AHM worked together to make a Union Pacific GP18, which only Bachmann, not AHM, sold, and I have a ton of those laying around. It was a really weird thing to research and figure out, so if Bachmann and AHM collaborated on a little tank engine, I'm not all that surprised. Next up, I have another really interesting locomotive. This is a Southern Pacific SW switcher. I don't know exactly what SW model it is, but it's an SW switcher. This one is fully die-cast, and as you can see, it's a little bit worn out. The decals are faded, there's some fading paint, but all the components look to be here. The front pilot, the handrails, and the rear pilot, all of it's here. It's even got some nice uncoupling levers. But what's really interesting about this model, I'll show you the other side. The decals are wearing off a little bit more here. But what's really interesting about this locomotive is the drive system underneath. It looks like this is a Lindsay model, I'm not entirely sure, but this looks like identical to the drive system out of the Lindsay Alco or not PAs, the FAs I got a long time ago. I still need to work on those and they've been infested with zinc pest, but the drive system looks very similar. Underneath, I can see there's some random wood in here too, so I would assume someone custom did this. This rear truck also looks a little bit sketchy with that pickup. And it looks like these are really vintage Cadies. I don't know when these would have been from. I've never seen a Cadie that looks like this before or has the uncoupling bar there. It's the same on the front. I've never seen a Cadie like that, and this is a really weird locomotive. I would be shocked if this one runs, and it'll be a very fun project to work on. Continuing with switchers, there was also this Model Power Amtrak Alco switcher. I think Model Power on the box calls it a 1000 horsepower yard switcher. I think it's just like a generic Alco switcher. I know they have their S-series locomotives. I think it might be an S2 or something like that. But seeing as Model Power says it's generic, I would assume there aren't any details specific to any of the S switchers, and that it's more generic of a model. This one is in a little bit better shape than that switcher we just looked at, but there are still some defects. This one's got all of its handrails, which is rare for one of these Model Power AHM type switchers. It's got just about everything, but the paintwork on the cab is a little bit rough. As you can see on this side, it's a little bit worn out. There's some chipping on both the front and the rear of the roof. On the back, there's just a little bit of paint mishap going on there. The bell looks to be a little bit bent, but other than that, it's in pretty good shape, and I think I can live with it. The wheels look pretty clean underneath here, and just like a lot of these AHM models, it's got a weight in the cab for some reason, which you can see through the cab windows. I don't like the look of it, but it's what these things actually need to run, so it's got to stay there. This one, I would be surprised if it doesn't run, and if it doesn't, it should be a pretty simple repair. Next up is a model I am extremely excited for. It's probably the one I'm most excited for out of this lot, which is in a blue box. This looks like a Penline GG1. There's the chassis, that's the shell, then we have a bag of parts. And this model has a pretty interesting story to tell. This is one that I looked at because I wasn't sure if it had all the parts. And when I first took it out, I had noticed that the brushes were kind of loose and there was no spring or anything to hold them together. So I thought I may have to custom make a spring setup for this thing. But I went digging through this bin just out of curiosity to see what we had. And I found that there was a spring and the components needed to hold it in place. So usually I wouldn't do work on models off camera, but I saw very clearly that it was missing parts. And I wanted to see for the purposes of this, if by only putting on this spring and putting the brushes back in place, if the thing would run. The wiring on it looks really good, and I think that was the only piece that may have been missing from this model. It'll definitely need a lot of cleaning and all that, because as you can see, the drive system in here looks to be kind of a mess. It's also missing the drive shaft down here, so if it does run, it's not going to move. So even with that little bit of work, it's still going to need a ton of work. I'll have to undo this, clean out the commutator, and do all that in the future. But that's not even the part I'm most excited about. It looks like someone has actually custom painted the shell. I would assume to paint it as a PRR model, and I'm thinking this thing might just need a good cleanup, and it's got all of the other cosmetic pieces it needs. The light pieces up on the front which are missing, the pantographs, the handrails, everything. So I'm thinking I may need to buy this thing some PRR decals and do it properly, because it looks like for whatever reason someone didn't get to finish this project and they were doing a really good job at working on it. I really like the way this thing has been going. The wires on this thing look a little bit sketchy but old. They seem to be securely attached, so I may be able to leave them alone. I'm not sure, but this will be a very fun project and I'm very excited to see if it'll run. I'm not happy that I'll have to put it on the back burner until decals get here, but I think that's what this project will deserve. And the final locomotive in this lot, and what I was told was the most expensive at 30 bucks, is this Athearn. I believe this is a Trainmaster, but I'm not sure. And what's really interesting about this model is it looks like it's factory new in the box. You have all the detail pieces right here in this little container. You still have the original diagram right here. And in the bottom, while they're a little bit rusty and may need a good cleanup, are the handrail wires. So this thing has everything you need to make it into an actual model. Everything should be there. So even though it was a little bit expensive, I think this one will be a very fun build to do, taking a factory new in the box Athearn locomotive and building it up to what it's supposed to be. While cosmetically it may need some work, I would be shocked if this thing does not run. It's a blue box that seems to be new in the box. It looks brand new just from looking at the thing. I would be absolutely shocked if this model does not run. So, now that we've gone through all 10 of these locomotives, let's test them out, see what runs, and see what doesn't run. So, now it's time to test everything out. I put the models in the center from the ones I think are least likely to run, which are the closest, and the ones that are most likely to run, which are the furthest. I'm going to start with this switcher, which I think is the Lindsay. This one, as I said, it's got some weird stuff going on inside the model, and I would be shocked if this thing runs. So, I'll give it some power. So far, nothing. I'll give it a little wiggle. And you can't hear that, but it definitely sounds like it's sparking, so that one's shorted out. Next up is the Penline GG1. I've done nothing but pop the shell on. If this thing does anything, it's probably just going to spin over because it's missing the drive shaft, so it probably won't move. But even if it does, I'll give it some power. And very clearly, it's trying to run. It's actually shocking. Obviously, it's not going to move, but it is running, and that gives me a lot more hope for this project. So I think once I'm done filming, I need to order this thing some decals. Next up is the Odd Diecast 280. Obviously, if I put power in the track right now, nothing's going to happen because the wire isn't touching the rail. I think it's this rail it needs to touch, maybe? I guess not. I've got power in the track. I think I will try the other rail. Try it backwards. So clearly that's the rail that's getting power. It moved for just a second, and then it seems like it got seized somehow. So this one will definitely need some work. There's some weird things going on with this model. Next up is the Aerotrain locomotive, and honestly, I've got no clue what to expect here. The shell looks to be in really good shape, but it's a vintage Varney. So I'll give it some power, and it's taken off. Try going forwards now. So obviously that model is very loud and pretty slow. It'll need some work, but shockingly, it runs. Next up is the Bachmann 280. I'll give this thing some power. I saw something for a split second. Okay, so it's smoking out of the smoke unit, which is normal. It's not out of the motor, at least, which is good. But it's moving very slowly. That's full power. And it seems like sometimes it just wants to stall. So this one obviously is going to need a bunch of work, but it's got signs of life, which is pretty good. Next is the Bachmann DD40AX. I forgot to check if this thing needed traction tires. It doesn't look like it has any, so we'll test it out, and it'll probably be apparent if it needs traction tires. Yeah, that needs traction tires. I'll try the other way. But as you can see, the beacon up top's working at least. But it's good to know the motor does run. It really sounds like all it'll need is traction tires and a good cleanup. Next up is the tiny Bachmann 060. I'll give it some power. And it seems like this one runs too. This is full power, by the way, and it is still a little bit sluggish. Now that it's all the way over there, I'll flip the direction, and it seems like it's stalled. I just gave it a little push, and now it's moving again, although not very well. And again, this is still full power. So this one does start, but it'll definitely need some work. Next up is the Athearn RS switcher. Seeing as this is an Athearn model, especially an RTR, I think this one's got a pretty good chance of running. But seeing the cosmetic damage to this thing, I'm a little bit weary, so I'll give it some power. It moved for a split second. So it looks like it does run. We'll try reverse. Okay, and now it derailed. It looks like it does run, but it'll need some work. It did not sound very good those last few seconds. It needs some cosmetic work anyway, but I think a good teardown, cleanup, and some new detail parts will help that unit out a lot. Next up is the model power switcher. These things, I've never seen one with any major issue that I can recall, so I'd be surprised if it doesn't run. These things seem pretty bulletproof, kind of like Athearn Blue Boxes, but not as high quality. I'll give it some power and we'll see what it does. And shocker, shocker, it runs just fine. I can't tell if the headlight's on or not. It might just be really dim, but it kind of looks like it's not on. I'll send it in reverse just to be sure. It is making a little bit more noise in reverse, which is noteworthy, but it is still running just fine. But yeah, this one might just need a little bit of fresh oil and it should be good to go. And finally, I have the Athearn Blue Box Trainmaster. I'd be shocked if this one doesn't run, so I'll give it some power. Very clearly it does run, but it's also really noisy. The headlight is working. You can't really see it because there's no lens in the bulb housing, so it's difficult to see out the front of the locomotive, but you can see it through the cab. The headlight's on. I'll go the other way. And to the surprise of probably nobody, this new in-box Athearn unit runs. So, while they don't all fit in the frame right here, those were the 10 mystery engines my friend spent $100 of mine on, and I think he did a very good job. These will make for some really fun projects, and while I do need to order some parts for probably 2 or 3 of these units, it'll be a nice, fun set of models to work on. So, if you want to see me fix any of these in the future, stay tuned. It'll probably be a few months before these start showing up because I've got so many other projects, but these will definitely be projects you see again.